I think we're going to get started, and then if people come in, you can all stare at them for being late. So thank you for coming along. My name's Ruth Cheesley, and the talk I'm going to be giving today is called "It's Time to Stop Breaking Your Promises." So we're going to be talking a little bit about what promises mean and what promises we make as web developers, how we break them, and also how we can stop breaking them. There will be time for questions and answers at the end, so if you have any questions, if you just either try and keep them in your mind or write them down, and then we can come to those at the end of the presentation. If you don't understand anything, then do please just put your hand up and I'll try and explain things more clearly. So, a bit about me. My name's Ruth Cheesley, as I mentioned. I live in the UK in a town called Ipswich, which is in the east of the UK. I've been part of the Joomla community since about 2008, 2009, and I've been running a user group in my local area, and I joined the leadership team two and a half years ago, I think it was. I joined the community leadership team, and I mostly help with marketing and user groups. So those are the two areas that I'm involved in the project with. I run a company with Marco Dings called Vibria Group. And my experience is mainly in the field of integration. So I'm not really a developer. I know enough to break code, and I know enough to not delete semicolons, because it tends to make people angry. But marketing is what I really enjoy. I'm a real SEO nerd, so if you start me talking about SEO or data, you'll be wanting to buy quite a few beers. So there's a warning, because I could talk about it all night. And I also have 2 cats, so anyone who follows me on social media will probably know about my cats more than they do about me. I'm on social media, pretty much every social media channel, so you can just search for my name. And do reach out to me on Twitter or whichever works for you if you've got any questions, or if you're trying to implement some of the things I talk about. I'm quite happy to help people out. So let's talk about promises. So we learn from a really young age of how important it is to keep promises, and we're taught to be quite careful about what we make as a promise. I certainly remember as a child being told, you know, if you make a promise, you need to keep a promise, and so be careful what you're promising. And breaking promises, I'm sure if you've ever had someone promise you something and then they break that promise, you tend to distrust that person maybe a little bit, depending on the bigness of the promise, obviously. But breaking promises does lead to distrust. And trust is really hard to gain. It's something that once you gain someone's trust, it's probably taken quite a long time, but it's very easy to lose. Like one thing you do and you can lose someone's trust. And once you've lost that trust, it's quite difficult to regain that trust. So it's quite a serious thing, I think, being able to keep promises. So how does that relate to web design, I guess? Are you careful about what you promise when you're building a website? And how often do you break your promises? And I guarantee you that every single person in this room will have broken a promise on websites they've built. So what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that everything you put online, whether it's an image, whether it's a PDF, whether it's a website, whether it's a single page, it's a promise. You've put that resource online, you've made it public, and people are expecting to find it at that URL. That's a promise. And if we break our promises, just like if you were to break a promise that someone with one of your friends, there are consequences to that. If you make one URL unavailable, then you're not going to have massive trust issues. But if half of your website, so 5,000 links, suddenly become 404, then all those people who were expecting to find something at those links suddenly don't find anything. All those search engines that thought there was something useful at those links sent someone there to find the stuff, and then that person realizes it's not there, will start to trust you less because the information that you're giving them is wrong. And then that's making them give someone else wrong information. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about promises in the sense of web development, is how we manage changes to the structure of our website, how we manage taking content offline and how we do that properly, and also how you know whether there are any problems at the moment with your websites. And I reckon that most of us, if we were to audit our sites, would find that there are problems we didn't know about. Clients who decide to change the menu structure without talking to you, or unpublish articles because they don't want them on the homepage anymore. And all that kind of thing happens, and I'm sure some of you will have that experience. If you haven't, you will at some point. So there are lots of ways that, as web developers, and particularly as Joomla developers, I've seen promises being broken. And I'm not saying I haven't done some of these either. Like, I've broken a lot of promises in this way before, and so has Joomla, actually. And Joomla has had to learn, when we've migrated sites, to do it properly. So some of the common ones: changes to the site structure. So that might be changing your menu items. It might be moving to different categories. It might, any of those kind of things that have an implication for the structure of the URL. That can cause your pages to become unavailable. Optimization, these annoying SEO people who optimize your website. And some of the less skilled ones will change the aliases, so it now looks pretty, but they don't actually redirect the old alias. So people will come to your best sales page that brings you in £10,000 a month and get a 404 because someone's optimized it and they haven't bothered to redirect. That's really annoying, especially if you've paid them to do it. And migrations are quite a common one, because sometimes when you migrate, the extension you used in Joomla 2.5 isn't there anymore in 3, or your client says, well, I want to change all these categories around, and I want this and I want that. And if you don't take a step back before you launch, all of your old stuff is not there anymore, and it's on the new one. And a lot of web developers just go, nah, whatever, pay me, you've paid me, I don't need to fix that. Please stop doing that. That's when people like me get called in. So changing extensions, I've kind of mentioned that, but if you switch extensions, often they will write the URLs differently. So you have to be aware of that and plan the way that you use that new extension, or write the URLs to the new URL. Broken extensions. We had an SH404 installation with over 1 million URLs in the table, because at some point it broke, and one of the shop extensions was just creating millions, well, hundreds of thousands of URLs. And that was just a broken extension, a bug in an extension, but that caused massive problems for that website. Not only because anytime you went into URLs, it crashed the site. Unpublished items, so just taking something offline. There's always reasons why you might want to do that, but you need to do it in the correct way to tell search engines that I've purposely taken this offline, and not just unpublish it and let it 404. And multilingual gone wrong. It's not quite so common because there's not that many multilingual websites, but you can make some pretty significant mistakes if you don't get your multilingual setup right, and that can lead to lots of problems with duplicate content or 404s. So what happens when you have one of these errors? What happens when you get a 404? It's changed over the years with Joomla. If some of you have been here since sort of 1.0 days, yeah, basically it was just like, sorry, problem. Some of you might be familiar with this one. Article not found. Yeah, red. As soon as someone says to me, there's a red box with white text, I'm like, oh no, really? With a load of cryptic information that nobody, even a web developer, understands what to do with, and certainly can't find what they're actually looking for. That's improved a little bit recently, so we now have a very helpful search box where you can search the site and find what you've been looking for, hopefully. But then you get the lovely template developers who do this. 404, sorry, I can't find your page. Full page, no menu, no nothing. So it's like, well, if you're going to tell me that you can't find it and you're going to dump me at a page, you could at least give me a cat picture or something. You know, like, don't just tell me, 2 fingers up to you, I'm not going to bother try and find the content, bye. And actually, there's a whole API with every single status code has a different cat image if you're interested. I think someone should do an extension for Joomla that does all the error codes using this API. That would be really awesome. So we're not really very good at handling errors. And so you can imagine if you're trying to find something, you're trying to buy £1,000 cat flap for your darling cat, and you land on a page and it gives you one of those messages, you're going to be a bit annoyed because you are wanting to find the information. The thing we have to embrace is that change is inevitable. We're running dynamic websites. We will have to change the structure at some point. You will have clients who unpublish content. So it's a matter of planning for that happening, ideally before it happens, but also having systems in place so you can pick up when there are problems and fix them before you lose the trust. So as soon as you start to get an increase in the number of 404 errors, you can be on top of it and fix it and tell off the person who broke it. So that's what I'm going to be talking a little bit about for the next sort of 20 minutes or so, is what processes you can go through to find out if you've got a problem and what tools you can use. And you can also use those tools when you know there's a problem and you need to fix it. And then how we can go about monitoring for problems. So how we can have systems that tell us there's a problem arising. The other thing to mention, if you were in Marco's talk earlier today with Joomla 4, that they're actually going to be decoupling the menu from the content. So that will be really nice because they can muck about all they like with one system and it doesn't affect the other. So hopefully some of these issues won't be quite so prevalent in the future. Fingers crossed, anyway. So why bother auditing? Before I started getting into SEO, I'd never really thought about doing audits on my websites. I just thought, well, you know, it's there and it works and what have you. But it's not only about looking at your structure, it's also about the links that you have in your site to other websites. Because whilst you can lose trust for your pages being not available, you can also lose trust if you link to a lot of other websites which are not available, because you're sending people through a link to a site that's dead. So running a link audit allows you to identify both internal and external problems. It's really helpful to run an audit before you put a new site live. Even if you're pretty sure that there's no differences, it's still very helpful to run it to compare like with like and just make absolutely sure that every resource that you had available here is available there if it needs to be available. And you'd be surprised the number of things that come up and you think, oh, I never knew about that page on a hidden menu in Dutch that I didn't translate. And you can identify problems with SEO. So there may be pages that don't have titles. There may be metadata that's missing. There might be too many header tags on the page. All of this can come up when you do a link audit on your website. And reviewing the internal and the external links on your site and making sure that they're all good. You can also pick up porn links if someone's hacked your site as well. You know, they put those hidden links in. Doing a link audit will pick those up. So the tool that I prefer to use, and that a lot of people who do this kind of audit for a living will use, is called Screaming Frog, screamingfrog.co.uk. It's an application. It's for every operating system, so I use Linux, and if it's there for Linux, it's generally there for every other operating system. It's free to index up to 500 URLs, and beyond that, it's like a £99 license, I think. So if you're doing this regularly on larger sites, it's a good idea to actually have that license. And what it does basically is you put in the URL of the site, it goes to that site, and then it follows all the links it finds on that page, and then follows all the links on those pages, and follows all the links on those pages, and it sort of understands directory structures and what have you. So the caveat with this system is that because of the way that it indexes your site like that, it does hammer the server, because it's going from one resource to another quite quickly. So it's a good idea to run this at a quiet time when your website isn't under a lot of load. And if you're using it regularly, then sometimes it's a good idea to run it on like a virtual server somewhere so that it's not affecting your own IP address. It's not thinking that you're the person that's always hammering these websites. So those are a couple of sort of gotchas for running this tool. But it's incredibly powerful when you run it. You put the URL in at the top, so I've done joomla.org. It tells you all of the URLs that it has found, both internal and external from that site. And in this column there is a response code. I think it's that column. I can't quite see it from here. So it will tell you 200 OK, or 403 access prohibited, 404 can't be found, 302 temporary redirect, 301 permanent redirect. So it tells you what the status code was for that page, which is very handy. And you can filter on the right-hand side, and you can say, I just want to see all the 4 series errors, like 401, 402, 403, and so forth. You can also view it in tree view, so you can see under each menu item what all the links are under each menu item. So it's a really handy piece of kit. It also connects up with Google Analytics and Webmaster Tools, which is now Search Console. So it gives you lots of information about your site's bounce rate and what have you as well. You can export all of these URLs into a spreadsheet, and spreadsheets is kind of where I spend a lot of my life, really, because you can then manipulate the data, you can copy all of the URLs, and you can then redirect them to the right place and so forth. And you can do this on anyone's site. So not only your sites, you can also index your competitors' sites and see what they're doing, which is quite nice. And Joomla.org, but that's quite a large site, it takes a long time to run. So it's a very, very handy tool to find out problems with your site. So if you have a client who says, oh, people are complaining that several of my pages aren't accessible, rather than have to sort of go through and find them, you could just run this tool and it will tell you which pages it can't access. Google Search Console, which is now, it used to be called Webmaster Tools, it's in the same place, google.com/webmasters, or you can go to g.co/search console, which to me is a heck of a lot more of a mouthful, but that's Google for you. Google Search Console will give you the same kind of information. So if you go to the dashboard, you'll see crawl errors on the left-hand side. Oh, you can't quite see it here. On the left-hand side, there's crawl errors. And that tells you when the Google bot has accessed your website and it's had difficulty accessing the resources. So it will tell you about server errors, so your 500 series errors. It will tell you about 404s where the page is not there, which it calls, well, I call them hard 404s. And it also tells you about soft 404s. And a soft 404 means the page or the resource is not there, but you're not sending the correct status code. So it knows that whatever it was looking for isn't available, but you're not saying it's not available. So those ones are the ones you also need to look at a bit more carefully, because it might be that you've got a bug in an extension and it's rendering like a blank page with no content. So that's useful. And then you get this nice graph that shows you over time when change has happened. So this kind of thing is usually quite a nice thing to show to your clients. I fixed this problem, look. If it's the opposite way round, you kind of go, hang on a minute. And we had this problem when the new resources directory launched, because all of the old listings that hadn't put a new listing in the old resources, in the new resources directory, were dropped off because they weren't available anymore. And so we had 16,000 URLs 404ing within days of having the new resources directory. So that's enough to make me spit my coffee out over myself in the morning when you wake up and see a huge uptick. So it tells you that there's something wrong, or it tells you that something has changed. And down here you'll see all of the URLs that are having problems, and you'll see the status code and the last date that was reported. So this can also be downloaded, and I tend to compare what I get from SEO Screaming Frog with what I got from Webmaster Tools and see if there's any that are missing, because sometimes one will pick up stuff that the other doesn't. The disadvantage with Webmaster Tools, you get 90 days worth of data and you don't control when it indexes. With Screaming Frog, you can do an index, you can fix a bunch of stuff and then do another index, in your own time. So that's a lot more helpful if you're trying to get quick results and know that things are working. There's also Bing Webmaster Tools, if anyone uses it. It's actually pretty good now. It used to be abysmally awful, but I would recommend that you do add your sites to Bing Webmaster Tools and you do use that as well, because more and more people are using Bing because it comes with Windows. So, and if they know no better, they just use the Windows search. So it's definitely worth using Webmaster Tools on Bing as well. So once you've done this audit and you've got your spreadsheets, you've got your list of your errors, and you've got something to work with, what do you need to do then? Well, the first thing you need to do is the 3 Ps, I say usually. You need to plan for the changes that you need to make. So rather than just go, oh my God, we've got 200 URLs that are broken, and you like run around in a big panic, just think, okay, we've got 200 URLs that are broken. Which ones are getting the most traffic? Which ones are the most important pages? Let's start with the most important ones and then work through. Yeah, so have some kind of routine that you're going to go through. Then we need to prepare, well, what do I actually need to do? I need to redirect page A to page B. Or I need to kill off page C because we're not using it anymore and we're not going to use it in the future. That one needs to go completely. Page D needs to go to page E. This domain needs to redirect to that domain. So prepare that all in a spreadsheet or whatever system you find works best for you. And then perform that update. So add the rewrites and check that they're working. Set it up in com redirect and make sure that everything is working as you would expect. There's an article on the Joomla. I write a lot of things in the Joomla community magazine about this kind of stuff. So there's quite a few links in my presentation to articles that I've written about how to migrate your links and how to do a link strategy. So it goes into a lot more detail there and the steps that you can go through. So do check them out. I'll be tweeting a link to this presentation later so you can see all of the links on there. So if we start with the plan phase, so we need to think about what needs to be redirected. Well, we've got that list from the audit that we've done, either from Screaming Frog or from Webmaster Tools. You've got a list of things that need to be redirected. What do I actually need to kill off? So by kill off, what I mean is tell search engines that this resource does not exist anymore and never will exist anymore. Bye-bye. Remove this from your index. Has anyone ever heard of redirect chains? Anyone ever seen redirect chains in place? So what a redirect chain is I might say, oh, link A, that's not there anymore. It now goes to link B. Okay, and then 6 months later, someone else just decides to optimize link B, and they send it to link C. But now link A is going to link B, and is then going to link C, which is pretty inefficient and pretty slow loading. So really what you need is link A to go straight to link C. Yeah? Rather than going A, B, C, it should be going straight to C. And that's very, very common when you've got an old site that's been around for a long time where people have been doing optimization. So Screaming Frog picks up on this and it will tell you how many levels of chains you've got. And it's not uncommon to get some pages that are like six or seven redirect chains, and they will take 10 to 12 seconds to load. And if that's like one of your e-commerce pages, you might as well kiss your customer goodbye because they're not going to wait for all of those redirects to happen. And the other thing to plan is how are you going to actually do the redirects? So some of you might not be confident enough to go and make changes in the htaccess file. If you make changes in the htaccess file and you do it wrong, it will white screen your site. So if you're not happy doing that, you can do these in com redirect. In Joomla 3 and above, there's a component called redirect. You enable the plugin, it picks up the 404s, and you can then just edit it like you would edit anything else in Joomla, paste in where it should be going, enable it, leave a comment to say why you're doing it, hit save, and it does the 301. So it's up to you to decide which one you would use. Now the reason you would probably use something like htaccess is that you don't have to load PHP to actually do those redirects, so it's a little bit faster. With com redirect, there is an overhead using that system. So you can actually also take it a step further if you're a server admin and do this in your Apache config file, but even I don't touch that. I give that to him. So if you want to know about that, you can ask him. So there are lots of different ways of doing it, and it's really your decision as to what you find the most effective way is for you. And also, how are you going to monitor this going forward? Because if you spend time fixing all these problems, You don't want to wait until you've got another 200 URLs to fix, because that's a real pain in the neck to have to clear a whole day to redirect all those URLs. So to be told that you've got, say, 5 or 10 URLs 404ing in the last day is important. You can go in and fix it and prevent catastrophe quickly and tell someone off. So then when we're preparing, the preparing stage is where we need to start creating the rules. So we need to say, I want to redirect from this to that. Yeah? So people may have heard of the different types of redirect. Has anyone heard of different types of redirect? Anyone? Marco?
Yes.
What, give me a type?
Oh, yeah, you just asked if I heard of them.
So there's a spreadsheet here, bit.ly/301 template. This is just a Google spreadsheet that you can clone, like copy into your drive, and you can just put in the old URL in one column, the new URL in another, and it will create your 301 statements for you. And then if you need to prepend or append things onto the URL, there's columns for that as well. So that's a really, really quick way of doing it if you literally just need to redirect this list of URLs to that list of URLs. And yeah, if there's any problems with it, or if you need some help, then just let me know. So we've got the 301 redirect, which is this resource has permanently moved to this place. Yep, so don't pass go, don't collect $200. It's from here to there. A 302 is a temporary redirect. So if you're moving something for a period of time and then you'll move it back again, then you can use a 302. Generally, you tend to be using 301s if you're going to be redirecting something. And 410, anyone heard of a 410 response code? No? So what 410 is it tells the search engine or anyone resources accessing the page, this no longer exists. And I'm purposely telling you this does not exist. So I haven't mucked something up, I haven't made a mistake and lost a page. I've actually purposely decided to take this resource offline. So a search engine will receive that error code, and they will almost immediately queue it for removal from the index. So, you know, use it with caution. Don't do it for your entire site. And also, it will not come back and look for that resource again. Whereas if you let something 404, it will come back quite often to see if it's come back again. So resources that are no longer there should have a 410 response code. So we need to, at this point, if we're going to use a htaccess file, we need to have our list of URLs that we want to redirect and create the statements. Or we need to have all the URLs in Redirect Manager ready to redirect. Has anyone used com redirect before? No? Did anyone have no idea that it even existed before I mentioned it? Because I'm really surprised the number of people that I come across who've never heard of it before. Okay. So using com redirect, it comes with Joomla 3. It was from, I think it was Joomla 3.2 and above, something like that. And it's under the component menu, and it's called redirect. So the plugin for com redirect is not enabled by default. So when you go into it initially, there'll be a red warning at the top that says the redirect plugin is not enabled. So you just have to go into Plugin Manager and turn it on. And it will then start picking up any 404s and listing them in a list. So anytime anyone tries to access something on your site and they can't find it, it will be listed in that list. So here you can see some URLs which have been accessed on my site that I couldn't find the resource for. There's a red Smarty, which is the universal Joomla symbol for unpublished. So by default, they come in this list as unpublished. You have to actually go in, edit them, and publish them if you want them to redirect to something. And that's just a simple form. So this is the URL someone was trying to access in this field. This is where you want them to end up. So we're going from here to here. This you change to enable rather than disable. And then you can add a comment. And it's usually a good idea to add a comment, because if you come back in the future and you're thinking, well, why did I do that redirect? that it can just nudge your memory. Or if someone else sees it and they see my initials, then they'll ask me, well, why did you do that redirect? So it's a good idea to do. And it's as simple as that. When you save that link and it's enabled, then anyone else coming to that resource will go to the new resource, the new destination. Now, since one of the later versions of Joomla, there's an advanced mode for this. So the advanced mode for this allows you to set your own error code. All of the error codes are available. Here be dragons. Okay, you can do damage with this if you don't know what you're doing. So be careful. It's disabled by default, but if you go into the options in com redirect, it will say turn on advanced mode. Yes, no. And when you turn on advanced mode, you get this box at the bottom which says what error code do you want to provide. So you would use 301 for a permanent redirect, 302 for a temporary redirect. Joomla by default will do 301. But you could also set a 410, gone. So if you've got a resource on your website that is no longer there and should not be there, you can set that to 410, and then Joomla will send that response code out when someone tries to access that resource. So that's one way of doing it. You can do that in com redirect by turning on the advanced mode. And there's an article here, bit.ly/com redirect, which is a really in-depth look at com redirect, which is on the magazine as well. So if you want a sort of step-by-step guide of how to use it and what all the different features are of com redirect, then do have a look at that article. So a really simple redirect, and the one that the spreadsheet does, is you would copy and paste this into your htaccess underneath the Joomla default stuff. And it just says redirect 301, the old URL, and then a space, and then the new URL. So it just says, I want you to do a redirect. It's a permanent redirect, this URL to that one. So that's a fairly simple statement. And if that's all you're needing to do, then that's all you need to do. And you can just have a huge, great big long list of these, redirecting A to B. What I would suggest you do if you're using htaccess to do your rewrites is that you comment each section. Like you can put a hash mark and a space and then write some text, and that allows you to say these are the redirects from our old site to our new site. Or, you know, this is the optimization that I did in October 2015. So that when you're looking through it, you can remember why you did those why you did those redirects. You can also use a rewrite rule. So if anyone's been familiar with using rewrite rules, this does exactly the same as the other one. So these two effectively do the same thing. But with a rewrite rule, you have a lot more power because you can use regular expressions, which allows you to sort of say, and anything after this. So you rewrite the whole URL middle bit, and everything after it gets appended. I'm not going to go too much into that in this session because that's like a whole talk by itself. Well, there are loads of tutorials on how to use regular expressions when you're doing URL redirections. So this is how you add the rewrite rule to your htaccess file. This is a comment, so you'd have a hash mark and then you'd say what this is doing. So we're redirecting a single URL, which was /article, to my new domain. So new domain /article. And we have R, it's off the end, R, which stands for redirect. NC means it doesn't matter whether the case is uppercase or lowercase, so disregard the case. And L means stop running the rules once you've run this rule. So that's a temporary redirect. And then a permanent move, you have R equals 301. So you're doing a redirect, and the redirect is a 301. And that's a way of doing a permanent move. And if you wanted to change domain names, for example, so you were moving from an old domain name to a new domain name, then you can also use some other commands. This URL is a really useful cheat sheet if you've not done much in the way of rewriting things before. And the more you learn, the easier it becomes to actually do fairly complicated things quite easily. So it's a good thing to have a look at if you're doing lots of rewrites and complicated changes. So killing a URL properly is the one thing that I don't think I ever see done in Joomla. And actually, I didn't know much about this until a couple of years ago. And ultimately, we have to embrace the fact that all things are impermanent, including resources on the web. So embracing the 410 error code is effectively embracing that sometimes things do go away, and we have to make them go away properly. And the way we can do that is we can either use the com redirect, which I mentioned earlier, or you can use a rewrite rule in your htaccess. And this is the URL of the page that needs to go, or the resource that needs to be killed. And then you have a dash in between the quote marks and G. And G is the Apache flag that says gone. And once you put that in your htaccess file, that will automatically send a 410 error response whenever that page is accessed. So that is the correct way that a search engine expects you to kill off content if you don't need it anymore. And the reason why you don't have anything in the second bit is because if it's a dead URL, you're not redirecting. You're just saying, bye-bye, this is enough, go. But I say it again, do remember that this causes the link to be de-indexed. It will cause it to be removed from search engines. It's actually probably the quickest way to get a resource removed from a search engine is to do a 410 error code and then to tell it in Webmaster Tools that you don't want that URL indexed anymore. So use it with due care and caution. And the other thing about, if we are going to break our promises, the error page is something that is really important. I see a lot of Joomla installs where they just use the default error page. That's better than it ever has been. But you can optimize these, and I think this is often a missed opportunity because if you get a 403 error message, for example, which is you haven't got access to this page, chances are that might be because there's a membership system or you have to pay to get access to that resource or something. And if you just tell me, sorry, you haven't got access, I usually just grumble and go away. Well, that was an ideal opportunity to say, sorry, you haven't got access to this resource, but for £5, only this month, special offer, you could have access to this resource. And then I'm more likely to think, well, okay, it looked okay in the search snippets, so maybe I will just pay £5. So it's a real opportunity, certainly with that kind of error message. And with your 404s, it's also an opportunity to style that experience within your brand and within your template, and not just leave this horrible white screen with a search thing hanging off the edge that doesn't really look like anything particularly nice. So there's a resource on the documentation which teaches you how to do this. So if you look on the Google Docs and you search for creating a custom 404 page, it also tells you how to do it for all the other error pages. So you can create a custom error page for a 410 saying, I'm sorry, but this resource is not available anymore and it's been taken offline. Here's a search facility if you want to find something else on our website and so forth. But use that as an opportunity to engage your customers. Don't just use it as a go away, you silly person, you typed in the wrong URL. Okay? And bonus points if you include the status cats. So there's also a very cool, I'll share it on Twitter later. There's a very cool kittens like 404 thing as well. What are you doing that for? Oh, okay. There are tools on the JED that help you with 404 management and help you with error management and things like that. But most of them will have a performance impact, and the performance impact on some sites with some extensions is very significant. And if you're looking to optimize your website, that can cause you like 1 to 2 seconds extra load time for these extensions. You should know what you're doing and do it properly. This is my opinion. So you should understand when you are killing off a URL and do it properly. You should redirect your URLs and do it properly. Some of these extensions allow you to sort of get away with cheating by having them fix stuff for you without telling you, and I don't like that. I think it's a lot more professional if we can do these things properly. And some can do more harm than good. So some of them can cause all manner of problems with duplicate content, with canonical problems. So often it's actually better if you can do it yourself and do it right. So for monitoring, Com Redirect will actually pick up 404s as and when they happen. So, but it does rely on you going in there and checking. So it's not that efficient unless you're logging into the site regularly. Google Analytics lets you set up alerts, and Search Console lets you set up alerts that will email you and say there's been an increase in 404 traffic, or there's been an increase in pages that have got server errors. And again, if you look at this resource on the Joomla community magazine, that shows you how to go through step-by-step setting up these monitoring systems. So in Analytics, when you go into the admin panel, there's a little bit down here that says Custom Alerts. And you can basically say, when my 404 page is being accessed more frequently than usual, tell me about it. And it will send you an alert to say, there's more 404s happening on your site in the last week than there was last week. So do something about it. And as I say, that how to set this up is actually on that URL. And in Search Console, you can change how often it emails you when there are problems. So that's the old as was webmaster tools. So if it has an increase in server errors or an increase in 404s, it will tell you before Google starts taking sanctions. So you can get on top of it really quickly. So about those broken promises, I've got something that I want you to recite with me. I promise that I will do my best.
I will promise that I will do my best.
To keep the SEO law. To plan my migrations. To make redirections. To show 404s the door. Brilliant. So I hope it's been helpful. I hope it's given you some tips on how to manage 404s and how to do that properly. If you have any questions, then do feel free to ask. And I will be around for the whole weekend, so do grab me if you've got anything you'd like to talk about. Are there any questions at all? Okay. Great, thank you.